Was that the big bucks bracket tour?
Yeah. We raced for 210s and a 50 there in Dallas, and then we went to Killcare Raceway and raced for 210s and a 50. When I was up in Killcare, I blew up my motor and thought I was done, but met a lot of good people at the track, and Terry Smith came over, Horsepower Sales, and fixed me up. He had a short block cymbal, so I was able to get the motor back up and running, and went to the SFG $1.1 million race. But it was a good time.
Now that's the great thing about drag racing, Brad. There's always people willing to help you out when you think you're down and out.
Yes, there is. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I shouldn't have been back there with my car. I have two cars. I got a new car that's a 68 Corvette, or not a 68, I'm sorry, 63 Corvette. And the motor I broke earlier in the season. So I didn't have it quite back together. And I was working a lot of hours and stuff, and I just didn't have time to work on it. And so I was planning on going to the SFG race because I really wanted to go to that. And the other races, it played out with work that I had a little extra time off, so I went ahead and went up there and hit all them races. And when I was in Killcare, broke the motor. Terry Smith is in Cincinnati. Top rate guy. Him and his guys, they got a great machine shop over there. Brought the motor to him. He was going to rebuild the motor that I broke. I broke a piston, and when it did, it broke the rod. It kind of bent the cam. And when I was taking the motor out, I rolled it over and seen there's a big old chunk missing out of the crankshaft. So he happened to have a 565. One of the guys that he works with there is named Huey. I can't remember his last name, but he had the 565 ready to go. Pretty much the same thing what I had. So he took my heads. I'd bent all my valves in my head, and he did a head job, valve job, bought all new valves, everything new. In fact, everything that is in that motor right now, the only original is the retainers, rocker arms, and the head castings. Had to buy everything brand new.
Wow.
But, I was going to have to come home and buy all that stuff anyhow, so it worked out that, within 4 days, he had me back up and running. He kind of helped me out, and I was able to make the SFG race there.
Yeah, a lot of drag racers tell me all the time stories about how other people, and it could be one of your opponents. They'll help you out with parts and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, out here in California, the problem is everybody gets so busy that they really won't put you ahead and take the time to get you back on the road and and so forth. But he did. Terry is a really, really hell of a guy. Like I said, he's got a really good machine shop. Had to order the parts, got them there the next day, and I was back up and running. Ronnie Vance, the track manager at Killcare Raceway, let me stay there at the track during the week. So I just drove back and forth, and got hooked up, and I tell you, even though I broke my motor back there, I had a really good time. I mean, it was. I'll do it again. But anyhow, coming up, I'm actually getting ready. The white car that I have, which I call it my white car, my 63 Corvette, it is up and running. I got it back and running, and I was going to run it last weekend at Bakersfield. And it ended up having to work a Friday night, Saturday night on a freeway closure out here. And I didn't want to pass that up. So what I'm doing now is taking my blue Corvette. I have a 58 blue Corvette. I need to take the transmission out of it. I've taken the transmission out of my white car, and I'm putting it back in my blue car right now. And I'm going to head on up to Tennessee for the Spring Clean Million. in Bristol, and then I'm going to go from there and go over to Memphis for the $1 million race, the Brett Cummings race.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of the plan right now.
So now the blue Corvette, what kind of engine you got under the hood of that one?
It's got a 565. That's the one that Terry helped me, get back up and running. And I don't know, it makes, between 900 and 1,000 horsepower, I'd say. My new car, it's got I built a 584 for it. And it runs pretty good. I ran it all out. It ran 803 at 167. And, it seems to be a good car, but like I said, I've only got 20 passes in this car total since I've got it back up and running. And I just put this motor together, and I just don't want to drive across country and go race it, something brand new. So my blue Corvette, I've made thousands and thousands of passes in it. I've had that car since I was, 22 years old was when we bought it, and we put it together and went from there. Actually met my wife when I went to buy a drive shaft for that car. My father-in-law races, and he would sell drive shafts for an Empire drive line, and went to get a drive shaft for that car and ended up getting my wife.
Wow.
So that was many years ago. But I've had the blue Corvette for years. It's been a good car.
So what's the fastest pass you made with the blue Corvette?
It's heavy. It weighs 2720 with me in it. And I went at 870. 880, I think at 887 was the fastest, or 878 at like 152 is what it'll run all out. Normally I run that car in the throttle stop even when I bracket race. A lot of people say it's more consistent when you bracket race it, but the car, it runs good. I ran it for a year, full throttle bracket racing it. And it ran good. It went like 660s, or not 660s, five 560s. And it just, it would go straight about every 10th or 11th pass. It'd take a right or a left, and, I need to kind of work on a 4-link a little bit with it and scale it. And I've always scaled it and stuff, but, I don't know. And then every now and then it'll sashay and it'll lose 100th. And, in 8th mile bracket race in 100th, you're pretty much done, you know what I mean? Because the guys nowadays are just so tough and on the money that, really you got to be there. And, I've always ran super gas with it, and the car just likes the throttle stop, so I just run the throttle stop on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd rather go there and win than, it's a lot funner to run it without the throttle stop, and I thought, what I need to do with that car is just put a high gear only valve body in it, and, that would probably settle it down. It's a heavy car for super gas, so I always run a really violent torque converter to get the car to bounce out of the beams, to cut a 4/10 light. And, I get the 4-link set to kill and, everything that you're not supposed to do, full throttle racing, you kind of go the opposite to, super gas race. Super gas racing, you take the front shocks and you loosen them all the way up, so when it comes back off the stop, it'll reset the car. And so it's kind of, the car, I don't know. I need to work with it some more, pretty much. But as of right now, I just run that car on the throttle stop. I don't care if it goes, on throttle stop, I run 630s, but it's still a good, good car. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So you're a big Corvette guy, huh?
Yeah. Kind of seems that way. I don't know if my family's always Corvettes. My dad, when I was born into racing. My dad raced. He had a 66 Corvette all the time. Seemed like he always had Corvettes. Growing up, we, just raced his Corvette, and then we actually went and bought my Corvette. We was going to buy it for my brother, and then me and him went over there and looked at it, and somehow me and him ended up going halves on it and buying it, and then raced it for a while, and then I ended up buying his half out of him, and then so I ended up with that car. But I'll never sell that car. I kind of got this newer car here. I'm going to start racing it so I could take my blue Corvette apart and redo it, because I got, I've probably been racing that car for over 20 years, 25 years now. So it's, I've had it for a long time. So it needs to come apart and repowder coat the chassis and, make things nicer and that kind of thing. Make it easier to work on.
So it's all Dad's fault you started drag racing, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't get enough of it when we were, in the younger days. Pretty much by the time I was 5 years old, there was three of us. There was me, my brother, and my sister. My sister being the oldest, and I have another brother that's older than me. And by the time I was 5, my mom and sister, they'd go shopping, and then my dad would take us to like Riverside Raceway, and we'd go racing with my dad, and that's kind of how we did it. And we knew how to behave, at the track. My dad just basically told us, hey, if you get in trouble or if you're not being behaved, you're not going. So we knew how to, take care of ourselves and not get in the way and that kind of thing. And it was a really fun childhood growing up, going racing.
So
a lot of my great memories was going racing with my dad, growing up.
So when you were growing up, did you get to see any of the big NHRA racers when you were a kid?
Yeah, we'd go to Pomona. My dad didn't travel a whole lot, but we'd go to Pomona. I'd get so excited rolling in the front gate, being 6, 7 years old. And, when you first that time when you drove in the front gate of Pomona, they always had a Feel Funny car or something sitting there and them working on it. And, I just remember that was just something great that I used to love growing up too. And then we'd go bracket racing all the time too. And just had a great time. I mean, it was a different time back then, where as a kid you could just run around and nobody really messed with you. Nowadays out here in California, if kids running around by themselves, people just flip out. You know what I mean? Might be a little bit different back east, but everybody wants the kids supervised nowadays, which is fine. But it seemed like a different time back then.
There's a lot of child trafficking going on these days.
Yeah, you get all these weirdos and stuff, but that's probably a lot with because I got a 7-year-old and I never let him out of my sight. Just afraid something happened, but no, it was a good time back in them days. Especially Riverside Raceway, we'd go up there and watch. And I just, as a kid, I couldn't get enough of it. And when I started racing, I just still can't get enough of racing. But that's just how I was brought up.
So what age did you start drag racing?
I started racing my street car when I was 7 or 16. We would go to Inyo Kern Raceway, which for us is about a 2.5-hour drive from here up to the desert. Inyo Kern was a really cool track. Not a lot of people liked it because it was the same way it was in the 50s. Basically, you made your run. As soon as you hit the return road, it was dirt. And all the pits were dirt. The staging lanes were dirt. When you started the car, you pulled up to do your burnout. That's when you pulled onto the asphalt. And it was at the airport, Inyo Kern Airport, Ridgecrest Airport there. And It just, the people were different. Kind of gave you that old school feel, because the people were different. Something happened, they just rerun the round, you know what I mean? No big deal. Everybody knew everybody, it's kind of a small gig. And I just had a great time there. I had an old 74 Malibu, big old heavy boat that run 17 seconds. I'd take it all the way up there. Me and my brother had a Ranchero, Ford Ranchero, 76 Ranchero. And we'd drive them all the way up there. When I get there, I had another set of spark plugs. And I'd have to change my spark plugs because one or two of them would be oil fouled by the time I got there. And I'd have to add 2 quarts of oil to the motor, after driving 2.5 hours. And it'd burn it. I mean, it didn't leak it. It just would flat burn it. And so I'd take the air cleaner out of it, wipe up the oil from the crankcase valve, and then I'd run it, and the announcer, they'd make fun of me, Brad Pierce going down the track blowing blue and black smoke. But that car, I tell you, it was just really consistent. It was 17 seconds, and I would deep stage it, and I'd cut lights with it. And, that's kind of how I cut my teeth. And then at the end of the day, I would have to add a quart of oil and then drive it home. And then once I got home, I'd have to change the spark plugs in it so I could drive to school the next day,
Yeah.
But it was a good car, it just, we called it La Bamba. That was, it was all brown, two-tone brown and beat up car, but it was fun. I ran that for a while, and then my dad had a dragster. About the time I was 18, I started driving his dragster, and drove that for a while. And then, I bought my car, or a Corvette that I had now. When I bought my Corvette, my 58, it was a basket case. We seen it in the recycler, bought it. There was, I don't know the true story behind the car. The guy had built this car, basically mounted a 58 Corvette. Why he cut it up, I don't know. Maybe the car was crashed. But it was, had big old chunks of fiberglass resin missing out of it. The body was in really bad shape, and he took it to Alston, had Alston build the chassis for it, and he'd mounted the body on there, and that's about as far as he got. And so me and my brother bought it off him, and I kind of done all the work. Tried to take it to shops. They said, "No, we ain't touching it. They ain't going to do the body work," because, most people at the time just wanted to replace a fender and spray it, and they got good money for it. And nobody wanted to touch the fiberglass. And I took it by I didn't take it by Mark Wozniak. I went over to Mark Wozniak's shop. He's ran a Woz funny car, Double B funny car for years. Well, he's kind of over in the same neighborhood I am, and he told me, nah. So he kind of told me a story. He goes, "Look, this is your best option." He goes, "Why don't you just go get some Bondo and put it on there and start sanding it and learn." And that's about what it come down to, because I didn't have a lot of money, I was a young kid.
Right.
So what I did was, there was a friend of mine that had went through a divorce, and his wife had went out there and stuck a garden hose in his carburetor on his boat and turned the carburetor or water on and filled up the boat motor. And then, so boat season came around, he undid the tarp, and there's this hose stuck in his carburetor, and the motor was just locked solid. So he came over to me, and he goes, "Hey, help me rebuild my motor, and I'll help you do some body work, So I said, all right. So I rebuilt this motor for him, and he came over and helped me sand down on the body there and showed me, some of the tricks of the trade. I ended up doing most of the work, but, he kind of gave me all the tips and stuff. So I sanded that thing up and painted it in my front driveway, and all the bugs that were stuck on it, I just put a sticker over them, and, that paint job held up. It's still the same paint job I have on it today when I painted it when I was 23 years old in my front driveway. But, so that's why one of the things I want to take it apart and redo it and make it make it really nice, you know.
Yeah. So how was your first time experience going down a drag strip at 16 years old?
You know, because I had been around it for years, and you know, it didn't look that fast. And my street car, it wasn't fast. It was just a 17-second car, so it's not fast. The first time I ever drove my dad's dragster, that was a little different. You know, I couldn't believe how fast it accelerated. I mean, I grew up watching the car go down the track and didn't think much of it. And I tell you, I got in there, and my dad, he unhooked the trans brake button and told me just leave off the floor for the first couple times. So when I plugged that thing, and my dad's old dragster, your head literally was about 8 inches from the motor, you know, the back of your head. And, man, that thing leaned over about 6,500 RPM and was just screaming. You know, and it's instant acceleration. The poles, it felt like, you know, Star Wars. The poles were out there. You plugged the gas, and that pole just went boom right by you. And then you knew you were flying. And I got to the finish line, got out of the cockpit, you know, and looked at that motor, and I thought that thing had a mind of its own. I just couldn't believe it. You know, it accelerated that fast. And two, you know, when you get in a dragster, you put the fire suit on, you put the helmet on, you know, it's a little different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And plus in a dragster, you sit really low to the ground, so it's just the speed's amplified. And yeah, I was pretty much hooked from there. You know, I got in there and kept doing it. Third time, he hooked up the trans brake button, and I don't know why. When I left the starting line, I let off the trans brake button, and then I hit the trans brake button, and then I let off the trans brake button, and then I hit the trans brake button. Well, every time you hit the trans brake button, it just locks the rear tires up. And I did that about 3 times, and then I was like, just let go of the trans brake button, man. And the way it went, you know. But my dad thought I was going to blow up the transmission. I did it twice, 2 passes in a row. I don't know why he did it, but, you know, it's just one of them things that, you know, you get all wound up and let her fly. But, yeah, that was an experience. But, no, it was good times, especially racing with my dad. That was, I had really good times, you know, about that time in my life, you know, and there was a lot of racetracks that we went to that I'd never been to before, which was really cool. But, you know, I never really did very good. The car wasn't always the best, but, you know, it's a good learning experience.
So now, Brad, besides your dad being someone that you looked up to, you know, in drag racing, did you look up to any other drag racers?
Yeah, you know, the pro drivers never really had a favorite pro driver, I would say. I always really looked up the sportsman racers. I liked Mike Perdure, you know, because he was always good at the time. Sheldon Gecker. Just seems like them guys down here, they were always like really good. So I kind of really looked up to them guys, you know, and, you know, I like, you know, I would always follow them and see how they doing in the dragster and the, you know, national dragster and so forth. The pro drivers back then, I think, were really good group. I don't think you'll ever get that kind of air again, like Bob Glidden, Gartlett, you know, the whole Joe Amato. You know, I was looking back in the National Dragster here, and you know, pictures of Joe Amato and stuff, and you kind of remember them days, you know, and that era in the 80s, early 90s, they really were, you know, heroes. I don't know if it's because I was younger, but yeah, they were really cool. You know, I remember going to the races and watching them, and you know, it just seemed like a little bit more electricity in the atmosphere when they would run. You know, it was kind of a different game. You know, nowadays, you got the teams like John Force, but Okay, you got John Force, but like everybody else really doesn't own the car, or they just kind of drive it, and it's not like a Bob Glidden that clawed his way to the top. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you see, and now I know Joe Amato has plenty of money and stuff, but it was a different era with him running. The guys, they just seem like real superstars to me, and it could be because I'm older now, and maybe it's just I was more impressed with that era growing up. I don't know, but no, there's I really enjoy watching the fuel car run. It's really impressive to see the speed and stuff. But I got to tell you, nowadays I'm more leaning towards the bracket racing. The big dollar bracket racing going on right now. It just really does seem the wave of the future to me, anyhow. I've raced NHRA for years. Out here on the West Coast, that's kind of all we've really had. We have bracket racing and stuff, but it doesn't pay nothing to win. $500 to win or whatnot. You just kind of go there to have a good time. And if you wanted to win money, you'd go after the national event, and that's where you could actually make a good check. And I've been lucky enough. I've won 7 national events with my blue car, and it's been a good car through the years. And so you kind of drink the Kool-Aid there, as they'd say, and you get a taste of a big check like that. And then now here the big dollar bracket racing's come along. Now back east it's been there for years, but out here, Chris Forsythe's kind of running his deal. It seems like it's starting to catch on a little bit more. Jesse Adams starting to run races, but he's up in Sacramento, and that's about an 8-hour drive for me. Kyle Seipels and Biondo are doing spring fling, and it really starting to take off a little bit, And for me, I get up for the big dollar races. It just seems like, if the money's there, when it's your day to win, it's your day to win. But if you win, it's kind of nice to walk out of there with some serious money, $10,000, whatnot. And I've won a $10,000 bracket race with Chris Forsythe. That was a cool deal because nobody wanted to split it, and we got to the final. It was supposed to be $7,500, but we had enough cars that he made it a $10,000 bracket race, and they didn't want to split it in the final. And the runner-up got $1,000, and I'm like, man, you sure you don't want to split it? And they didn't want to split it, so I ended up winning it, and that was a pretty cool deal. You get a $10,000 check right there, when you leave the track. NHRA, most I've ever won at a national event has been $16,000 with the contingency. But you got to have all the stickers on there, and that's what I do. When I buy a product, I make sure I buy what NHRA pays contingency and that kind of thing for. But it's kind of dwindled. Not sure what NHRA is doing with the sponsors. Apparently, they're not making them very happy because nowadays you win a national event, you're lucky to get $9,000, and it's just kind of going downhill over there. And the bracket racing, they got 3-4 bracket races a weekend. So you go and screw up and red light by 1 thou. At a division race or a national event, you're done. And you're sitting there and you can't wait for the next weekend to find another race. And at a big dollar bracket race, they got like 4 or 5 races. When you're done there, you feel like you've got your bracket racing scratch done. Like the cup's full. So I really enjoy that because if you red light by 1 thou, well, you got tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't have a good weekend. Well, you don't have a good weekend sometimes when you NHRA race too, But I really think that that's where it's going for sportsman racers is the big dollar bracket racing. Don't get me wrong, I still have a great time going to an NHRA race. And then, but I've been many a times that I've lost first round and was leaving the track before I even seen one pro go down the track. You know, because that's just the way the program works out. But I just, you know, because you're spending just about the same amount of money, and bracket racing, you're getting 3-4 races at 10 grand, 30 grand. I mean, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. And plus, you know, you're at a bracket race, you jump in and you're going every day. And it's, to me, it's a good time.
Now, when you were a kid going to Pomona with your dad, did you ever meet any of the drivers?
I never would go up and try to, you know, hang out with the drivers or whatnot. I would always go up there and stand there. I was always amazed of them working on the engines. I never had the courage to ask them if I could wash parts. I really kind of wanted to wash parts and stuff like that, because when they'd set the blower or the heads right there on the bench next to the, you know, the people, and I wanted to like look at the heads and stuff, you know. I was more interested in the motor than I was, say, getting an autograph or, you know, having a conversation with one of the drivers or whatnot. My dad and a friend of his, Sonny Gonzalez, they knew Jody Smart and that kind of thing, so we'd get to go over there and hang out a little bit, you know, here and there. But no, I never really got to talk to any of the drivers, you know, and kind of get their aspect of it. You know, I really thought about like getting on a team when I was about 18, but I had kind of taken a different turn, and I got in construction when I was 18. And I was making really good money. So it was kind of like, I'm just going to, you know, just work. But I wish I would have, you know, probably tried to get on a team, you know, back in them days when you're young. And I think that would have been a kind of a cool thing to do, to go around from track to track and go racing, you know, at least for a couple years. But no, I got into, when I was 18, I started working. I got in the union, and I was making, you know, same money that my dad was making, so it was kind of like, you know, and then I bought my own race car and, you know, doing my own thing, so that's kind of where I went, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you prefer the quarter mile or eighth mile?
We've always been quarter mile out here in the West Coast, but I really dig the eighth mile. And I tell you why. I've always had a slower car. My car's heavy, but, you know, I've never had a lot of money, you know, in my pocket, you know, because being a construction worker and all. So you race what you got, you know. And so just seems like I would always have the slowest car. And when you run 8th mile bracket racing, them guys can't get a big run on you. You know what I mean? Like, the guys with the faster cars, the split ain't that bad. You know what I mean? You get down to the top end, or, you know, 8th mile, and it's a lot easier to judge. For me, it is. Two, you know, everybody's car is dead on in the 8th mile, so it's easy to dial it, and then, you know, you just got to hit the tree. And, you know, if there's a little room to, you know, quit, then, you know, there you have it. So, you know, that's kind of a, you know, I'm kind of digging the 8th mile right now. Right now, I would say I'm liking the 8th mile. I know there's a lot of guys out here that want to race a quarter mile, but what happens here is our prime time out here to race quarter miles in the spring and the fall. Well, you can't have a big, you know, a lot of cars at a bracket race and not go into night. And when you go into night out here, the dew gets on the track and people crash all the time. I mean, they try to race the spring fling 1,000 foot, and they always ended up going to 8th mile because, you know, this time of year, I would say this time of year, but, you know, the prime time that, you know, people have their bracket races and stuff, that it's just, the track's just, you know, it won't hold it. You try to race quarter mile, you end up crashing. And that's always happens, and they always go to eighth mile, which is, I think, a better gig anyhow. You know what I mean? That way you're eighth mile from the get-go, and, you know, it's all fun. It's still, you know, your adrenaline gets pumping and stuff. And, you know, I like it. You know, I know there's a few people that don't like it, but, you know, but I like it.
All right, now, what do you enjoy most about being a drag racer?
You know, a lot of people complain about having to take off time to go from work and go to the races, and I do it too. You know, you kind of bitch a little bit about, you know, son of a bitch, I got to take off time, and this has cost me a lot of time off work and stuff. I enjoy taking the time off work. It forces me to take a time off work to go racing. You know what I mean? Because you get out and see other things, see the countryside, you know. My wife would go racing with me and her parents. She doesn't do it a lot nowadays because we got a kid, you know, it's a 7-year-old kid. He's got to go to school and stuff. But we'd always make like a vacation out of it, go see something, go do something. That was always really cool, you know, kind of different. You know, you kind of force yourself to take a little bit of a vacation. And then, too, you know, you work 24/7 all the time, you know, just, I mean, you know, what's the purpose?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And plus, the other thing I like about racing is the competition. I really like competition. And, you know, that's why one of the reasons I always kind of went and raced at the NHRA level, because the guys there were, you know, no slouches, and, you know, it's good, hard competition. And when you win, you know, you really feel like you've completed, you know, something.
Now, if you could have the drag race fans remember one thing about you, Brad, what would you want that one thing that they remember about you to be?
Well, I'd like them to remember that I was a great racer, but sometimes I don't make that happen. So, you know, that's, hopefully I can start winning some more so they remember me as being a really tough racer, but, you know, I guess we can't have it all, right?
Yeah. Now, do you have any sponsorship?
Yeah, Lucas Oil helps me out. And plus, you know, the tubes in my, you know, I love tubes because you come out and the car's not flat. You let the car sit there for 2 years and the tires never go flat in it. But I think a tube in a tire like that works a lot better. And they're little Bubbas and big Bubbas. I mean, they just speak for themselves. I mean, you can't. I think that's probably the best tire out there for a sportsman racer nowadays. I had a funny car for a while. It was Bob Rossi's old comp car, and I bought it. I've always loved funny cars. Than less, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had a 17-inch wide tire on there, and I took that thing off, and Mike told me, well, put this little Bubba on there, Mike Judson from Mickey Thompson. So I got the little Bubba, and I put it on there, and what a difference it made. I mean, it not only went faster because it was smaller, I don't know if it had something with pounds per square inch that hits the surface, because the tread width is only like 13.5 inches on the little Bubba. And that thing, when I had a 17-inch wide tire, or 16-inch wide tire on there, it would, when it shifted, you could feel the rear end move around a little bit, because on a funny car, you sit over the rear end. And this thing, when it would shift, it was just, you know, dead perfect, dead solid, straight down the track. You know, it just was a better tire. And I didn't think it was, because it was a smaller tread, you know what I mean? And, man, they just work. They just work. But, yeah, that's kind of the people that help me out, make the house payment, you know. I know we don't have enough money, but just don't make the house payment this week. We'll go racing. You know, we'll pay it next week. I mean, not too many wives will let you do that.
Right.
So, I was kind of blessed because her, you know, she grew up in a racing family, and it just seems like we fit together really well, you know, and fortunate enough to have her and met her, you know. So that was, you know, yeah, I never thought I'd get married for, you know, as much as we go racing and how much money you got to dump in the car. The motor blows up. Oh, I need another 5,000. You know, here, give me the credit card. You know, so that's a pretty. You got to have a good wife that'll understand these things.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I've always been a sportsman racer, and I don't think I'll quit. I think as I get older, I might have to slow down, whatnot. One of the things I was redoing my Corvette, my blue Corvette, is when I was 22, 23, I laid on my back and wired underneath the dash. I did all the wires. And I had a tough time getting in there, and I had a gauge or something break on me. And I, about 5-6 years ago, I climbed up underneath there to replace it. I didn't fit. I mean, literally didn't